December 13th, 1937, dawn. Smoke rises over Nanking's western districts as Japanese forces move through the city. 4 Chinese women kneel in the rubble, hands clasped in prayer, while soldiers with flags stand behind them. This moment, captured in photographs that would later surface, represents what John Rabe saw from his Siemens compound window at 4:47 a.m. 600 refugees were already pounding on his gates. Japanese troops were hunting civilians, building by building. Rabe grabbed one object from his desk, a red armband with a black swastika. When Chinese refugees saw that Nazi symbol, they didn't run away, they rushed toward it. Rabe walked outside wearing the armband and raised his arm at advancing soldiers. They stopped, they saluted, they withdrew. By sunset, 20,000 refugees flooded his safety zone. The kneeling women in that photograph, they were among the hundreds of thousands who would face this choice: pray for mercy from Japanese soldiers or run toward a German Nazi's protection. Nobody knew Rabe would save 200,000 lives with the world's most hated symbol. 3 weeks earlier, in late November 1937, every Westerner in Nanking was packing. The Japanese army had already massacred 300,000 in Shanghai. Nanking was next. But 22 foreigners stayed behind and formed the International Committee for the Nanking Safety Zone. John Rabe was one of them. He'd lived in China for 30 years, rising to chairman of Siemens China operations. The Chinese community respected him. His employees trusted him. But there was something else on his desk that morning: his Nazi Party membership card, purchased in Berlin in 1934 for business networking. Next to it sat a framed photo of his Chinese workers' families. Rabe made a decision that would weaponize ideology to prevent genocide. He would create a safety zone covering 3.86 square kilometers in the city center and use his Nazi Party membership as a shield. The symbol, designed to destroy millions, would be turned against itself. Between December 1st and 12th, 1937, Rabe worked with American missionary Minnie Vautrin to map safety zone boundaries. His plan was simple but insane: wear the swastika armband during every interaction with Japanese military forces. The logic? Japan and Nazi Germany had formalized their alliance through the Anti-Comintern Pact in 1936. Attacking a Nazi Party member meant risking an international incident. Rabe tested his theory on December 9th. When Japanese bombers appeared over his compound, he climbed onto the rooftop wearing the armband and waved his arms at the pilots. The planes banked away. Chinese refugees watching from below noticed immediately. Word spread fast through the panicked city. The Germans' symbol protects. Rabe stood on that rooftop with the red armband raised toward the sky, bombers circling overhead, and realized he'd just turned hate into armor. It was the most dangerous bluff in history. One wrong move, one suspicious officer, and the entire shield would shatter. Dawn broke on December 13th with the sound of collapsing gates. Japanese troops breached Nanking's city walls as artillery fire pounded the western districts. Inside Rabe's Siemens compound, 600 refugees huddled in courtyards, while 2,000 more hammered on the locked gates outside. Rabe heard boots approaching, Japanese soldiers moving methodically down the street, bayonets fixed, hunting civilians building by building. He walked outside alone. The red armband with the black swastika was visible from 50 meters away. Rabe spoke German with absolute authority, gesturing at the compound behind him. The Japanese officer in charge stopped 3 meters from Rabe, stared at the armband, then bowed. His unit withdrew. By nightfall, 20,000 refugees had flooded into the safety zone. But here's the twist that could have killed them all. Rabe had no official diplomatic immunity. He was a businessman with a party membership card, not a German government representative. Every encounter with Japanese forces was a gamble. In his diary that night, Rabe wrote, "I am using my party membership like a weapon. It may backfire." Between December 14th and 20th, Mass executions began outside the safety zone boundaries. Rabe heard the gunfire every night. Steady, mechanical, industrial-scale killing. During the day, he used the armband to patrol the zone and confront Japanese soldiers attempting to drag civilians away. At night, he documented everything. Witness testimonies, body counts, photographs of massacre sites. He wrote in his diary by candlelight, the red armband draped over his chairback, screams audible through the window. Then he hid each page in a different location, under floorboards, inside roof tiles, behind false walls in the compound. Conservative estimates would later place Nanking massacre deaths between 200,000 and 300,000. Rabe was creating the evidence trail that would prove it. But if Japanese forces discovered his documentation operation, the armband wouldn't save him. On December 19th, a Japanese officer searched his office while Rabe stood there wearing the swastika. The officer found nothing. Rabe had moved the diary pages hours earlier. He was running two operations simultaneously, protection by day, documentation by night. Both could get him executed. January 1938 brought a new problem. One man wearing one armband couldn't patrol 3.86 square kilometers. Japanese soldiers were crossing into the safety zone at multiple entry points, and Rabe couldn't be everywhere at once. His solution was audacious. He painted swastikas on bedsheets and turned them into makeshift German flags. He planted these flags throughout the zone at strategic checkpoints. Then he recruited Chinese volunteers to wear Siemens company insignias, not Nazi symbols, but German corporate logos that resembled official German presence. The International Committee for Nanking Safety Zone officially documented 250,000 refugees crammed into those 3.86 square kilometers by mid-January. Japanese forces respected the flags. They wouldn't cross boundaries marked with Nazi insignia. Rabe had essentially franchised diplomatic immunity to Chinese civilians using painted bedsheets. Each flag was a bluff. Each Siemens logo was a calculated risk. If one Japanese officer decided to test the boundaries, the entire system would collapse. Rabe walked his daily patrol route, checking each flag, straightening each symbol, maintaining the illusion of German authority. The smell of smoke from burning districts outside the zone never stopped. By late January, 3 separate forces were hunting for Rabe's hidden evidence. Japanese military police wanted to destroy any documentation of atrocities. Chinese resistance fighters wanted to smuggle the evidence to Chiang Kai-shek's government. And the German embassy wanted Rabe to stop collecting evidence entirely. It was damaging Germany's alliance with Japan. Rabe trusted none of them. On January 23rd, a telegram arrived from the German ambassador. Cease activities immediately. Rabe read it once, crumpled it into a ball, and tossed it in the trash. The armband sat on his desk next to the wadded telegram. He kept wearing it every single day. Here's the impossible part. The Nazi party that gave him the symbol now wanted him to stop using it for humanitarian purposes. The swastika was meant to represent Aryan supremacy and genocide. Rabe had turned it into a shield for Chinese civilians. That wasn't just defiance, it was ideological heresy. But Rabe's response was silence. He ignored the order and continued his patrols. The armband stayed on his arm. The diary pages kept accumulating in hidden locations throughout the compound. Throughout January and February 1938, Rabe established a predictable daily routine. 6 a.m. patrol wearing the armband. 9 a.m. meeting with Japanese commanders to negotiate refugee issues. Afternoon documentation of incidents. Midnight diary writing. The pattern never varied. Japanese observers tracking his movements assumed he was just a stubborn German businessman maintaining order in the safety zone. They were wrong. The predictability was camouflage. Each day during his patrol, Rabe removed diary pages from their previous hiding spots and smuggled them to new locations. His route map marked each checkpoint, each flag placement, each spot where the armband would be visible to Japanese sentries. But the real map, the one he kept in his head, tracked where 2,000 pages of evidence were hidden across dozens of locations. On February 12th, a Japanese officer asked to inspect Rabe's compound for contraband weapons. Rabe agreed immediately. The officer searched for 3 hours and found nothing. Rabe had moved the evidence the night before. The ordinary routine had been hiding an extraordinary smuggling operation for 8 weeks. Nobody suspected the armband was both shield and distraction. February 1938 brought false hope. The Japanese military command announced that peace had been restored in Nanking and pressured the International Committee to disband the safety zone. Rabe refused. He knew massacres were still occurring outside the zone boundaries. He could hear the gunfire every night. A Japanese commander confronted him. "You've done enough, Mr. Rabe. Time to go home." Rabe's response was cold. "I'll leave when they're safe." The two men sat across from each other in Rabe's office. The red armband lay on the desk between them, like a challenge. Rabe believed his documentation was secure. He thought he could eventually get the evidence to Berlin and force Nazi leadership to confront what their ally Japan had done. He was wrong. The German embassy had already sent reports to Berlin describing Rabe as unreliable and exceeding his authority. On February 23rd, Siemens headquarters in Germany ordered him back immediately. Rabe had 3 days to prepare his evidence extraction. The false certainty that he was untouchable had just shattered. The armband had protected 200,000 refugees. Now Rabe had to protect the evidence that proved what they'd survived. Between February 26th and 28th, Rabe faced an impossible logistics problem. He had 2,000 diary pages, 105 photographs, and 500 witness testimonies hidden across the compound. He couldn't carry everything. Japanese officials would search his luggage at departure. His solution was to distribute evidence among the remaining International Committee members who were staying in Nanking. But he kept one complete copy of the diary for himself. His hiding method was brilliant. He pressed diary pages between the technical diagrams in German engineering manuals. The pages looked like part of the documentation. Japanese searchers wouldn't be able to read German technical specifications, and they'd never suspect that Siemens mechanical diagrams concealed handwritten testimony of war crimes. On February 28th, his final day in Nanking, Rabe said goodbye to the refugees. He took off the red armband for the last time and handed it to his Chinese assistant. The man stared at the fabric in his hands. "What will protect us now?" Rabe answered with 2 words: each other. The symbol that had stopped Japanese soldiers for 2 months was now just red cloth again. But the evidence it had helped hide was about to travel to Germany. March 1st, 1938. Rabe boarded the train from Nanking to Shanghai, the first leg of his journey back to Germany. His luggage contained 3 Siemens engineering manuals, each one thick with technical diagrams. Hidden between those diagrams were his diary pages, 2,000 pages documenting mass murder, systematic rape, and civilian executions. Japanese military police searched every passenger at the Shanghai station. They opened Rabe's suitcase and pulled out the manuals. One officer flipped through pages of German technical specifications, saw nothing but engineering drawings and mechanical calculations, and placed the manuals back in the suitcase. The officer never noticed the handwritten pages pressed between the diagrams. The train crossed from Nanking to Shanghai, carrying evidence that would later become crucial historical documentation of the massacre. Rabe sat by the window and watched the city disappear behind him. He'd saved 200,000 lives by weaponizing a symbol designed to justify genocide. The irony wasn't lost on him. The evidence survived because Japanese military police couldn't read German. Sometimes the most sophisticated smuggling operation succeeds because of something simple: language. March 15th, 1938, Berlin. John Rabe arrived home to a hero's welcome that lasted exactly 6 hours. By 6 a.m. the next morning, the Gestapo raided his apartment. They confiscated everything: diaries, photographs, evidence. Rabe was arrested and interrogated. The Gestapo officer's words were precise. You embarrassed the Reich. Japan is our ally. Your testimony threatens that alliance. Rabe tried to defend himself. I used my party membership exactly as the Reich taught me, to demonstrate German superiority. The officer sneered. You used it to save Chinese lives. That's treason. The red armband that had stopped Japanese bayonets now sat on the interrogation table as evidence against him. Rabe was released later that day with a permanent gag order. He could never speak publicly about Nanking. His scheduled lectures were cancelled. His reputation was destroyed. Siemens terminated his employment. The symbol that saved 200,000 people in China condemned him in Germany. The same party membership that gave him diplomatic immunity abroad now marked him as a traitor at home. The armband was confiscated. The evidence was buried in Gestapo archives. Rabe walked out with nothing. Between 1938 and 1945, John Rabe lived in poverty in Berlin. He worked odd jobs and survived on small charity payments sent by former Chinese employees who remembered what he'd done. In 1945, after Germany's defeat, Allied forces interrogated every Nazi party member they could find. Rabe was on that list. But he showed them something the Gestapo never found: diary copies he'd buried in his garden in 1938. The Allies cleared him and recognized his humanitarian actions in Nanking. But recognition didn't pay rent. Germany was in ruins. Rabe had no pension, no savings, no employment prospects. He was 63 years old and broken. The Chinese community in Nanking sent him food packages until his death in 1950, largely forgotten by the German public. The people he saved remembered. His own country never forgave him for using Nazi ideology to prevent genocide instead of commit it. The tattered red armband sat in a drawer in his apartment, never worn again. Allied clearance papers lay on his desk next to unpaid bills. He'd saved 200,000 lives and died in poverty. In the 1990s, Rabe's granddaughter discovered his diary in the family archive. Published in 1997, it became crucial evidence for historical documentation of the Nanking massacre. In 2006, Rabe's former home in Nanking was converted into a memorial museum. The red armband is now on display behind protective glass. Faded, sacred, impossible. Museum visitors stand in front of it while modern Nanking rises outside the windows. A city of 8 million people that wouldn't exist if one German businessman hadn't weaponized hate to create a shield. Final count: 200,000 to 250,000 lives saved. The same armband that stopped Japanese bayonets in 1937 now stops historical denial in the 21st century. It sits in that glass case, proving that symbols have no inherent power. Only the humans who wield them do. What does it mean when evil's insignia becomes good's only weapon? Rabe proved the answer is simple. It means nothing. Symbols are just cloth and meaning. Humans make the choice.